Hey everyone, welcome back to the Harbor. I'm your host, the Kino Cowboy. I'm here with my co-host, Scott Keith. Today, we're returning for a new Cassavetes, not new, but another
The
Cassavetes
brand
film.
new Cassavetes,
Fresh off the
uh,
presses. Yeah. No, but
fresh
we did
off
Kill-
Warfare. You'll see it in Cassavetes and IMAX.
yeah. We did Killing of a Chinese Bookie a few months ago. Was it last year? I can't remember. We do so many of these episodes. But today we're doing Woman Under the Influence because everyone was telling me that was his best film.
Yeah,
So
it's the
now
one I
we're
hear about a lot. A woman under the influence. Oh,
happy 420.
Pat, this is our 420 episode. I thought it was about a woman getting DUIs. Ugh.
Good
Okay,
one.
I did that bit. I had to get that out.
Yeah,
It is a woman under the influence. Which is I don't know one of the most important links in the chain of mental illness movies in American cinema.
for sure.
But really it is.
Well, it was like, first of all, this is another film. We've done a lot of films that are distinctly 70s thematically.
Dude, I love 70s cinema. It's my favorite decade. Continue.
This is another one we've done a lot, but it's like this is very distinctly 70s and we'll talk about why. This stars Peter Falk and what's her name? His it's Cassavetes' wife, isn't it? Gena Rowlands.
Yep. Gena Rowlands. Is that his wife? I didn't know that. This is a side note, but I'm looking at the character's name. Their name is Longhetti, and they're constantly eating spaghetti. And
Spaghetti
I
Longetti.
don't. It's really unintentionally funny. I know they're just like an Italian American family or whatever. But like I
Yeah.
don't. It's I can't stop giggling over it. It's so that's about where my head is at today, folks.
Well, thought it was fascinating that it was his wife and she wanted to do this as, huh? What's that?
Oh, I'm just thinking, like pitching that to my wife. I'm like, hey, Toots, I got a script about a crazy broad, and I know who would just be perfect for it.
Which is exactly what executives told him when he got turned down so many times for trying to get this movie off the ground. It's like no
what did
one
they
wa-
what did they tell him?
They
They call
told him
him
no one wants
Lawrence.
to watch a crazy dame for 2 hours.
No, it's you haven't seen my exes.
So it's very 70s in that
It's
way.
almost
But
exclusively crazy
she wanted
dames.
to do it as a stage play. But then when she was reading the material and saw how intense it was, she's like, I can't do this like every day for 8 weeks. So
Yeah, that would be. I mean, that would be
let's
incredibly.
do
I
a
mean, that would
film.
be a feat of acting to be able to pull that off. Because that's something I've heard about with like actors and directors, like the idea of like how much of the emotion should you actually feel? Should you try to like conjure the emotion and then act it out, and or should you act it out and the emotion comes from that? Um, but it might have been my acting teacher who was even just like doing that like every night for weeks. Like you just even if you could, which you really can't, like nobody can, but like even if you could, you would go crazy. Like you'd lose your mind. It's just you know. But I mean, she gives a hell of a performance. I mean,
Yeah.
it's one of the greatest screen performances of all time because it's so hard to play crazy. Like it would be so easy to come off like a sketch, like an SNL
Yes.
sketch or something, you know. But she does. You can really tell she did the work in constructing the idiosyncrasies of that character. Like just for one little thing throughout the movie, beginning to end, she makes certain gestures like she'll like jab her thumb up and like make a noise with her mouth or be like pop, 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 or like make different sounds with her mouth that are almost these ticks. You can tell she like really worked on that. So that gives us something to anchor at least her physicality around, you know? So it feels specific to that character and not just like, well, I'm a wild and crazy cat like Steve Martin.
Yeah,
I,
totally.
I respect Steve Martin. No disrespect. Love you. Um, but you know what I'm saying, though.
I definitely know what you're saying because that's the thing I appreciate about is like, yeah, she's definitely off, but you're still trying, just like, okay, we did Being There a few weeks ago. This is someone who is also not all there mentally. and he's a very completely different kind of performance, and yet you're still kind of unsure from scene to scene how he might react to anything. And this is like similar in a way, despite a completely different performance, it's still nuanced enough to where you're wondering what might be next and what level she might be at. And you spend kind of the movie trying to figure out how anchored she is or not.
Because this definitely, I mean, this is obviously when her mental health is at its nadir, it's
Yeah.
at its lowest. And that's what we're seeing. Because I'm trying to, throughout the whole movie, I'm trying to imagine the beginning of this marriage.
Yeah.
Like, was it an accidental pregnancy and a shotgun marriage, as was common back then? Um, or was it, she was more stable, maybe eccentric, maybe she was better medicated, maybe things were just like more stable in her life, and they fell in
Yeah.
love. Like you're trying to imagine, because like clearly this is as bad as she's got, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and it is pretty tough to watch at times to imagine like a mother um being like that around her children and even other people's children, which is crazy. But it is just enough where you can like tell there's a good person in there and tell there was something there. And here's the thing, you talk about how she's going to react, and this is highlighted at the end of the movie, but like she's on unstable ground because she's with a man who's also not that stable,
Yeah.
like a lot of volatile blue collar guys at the time, who for all we know he's somebody of his generation, he's probably a war veteran or something. But um it's one of those things where um yeah, we don't, she I think the circumstances she's been in, the stresses of motherhood, the stresses of this particular marriage has like eroded that. And then the husband, who we see more and more of his true colors as the movie goes on. And I'm going to offer my theory of the true meaning of the woman under the influence. It's like a woman under the influence of patriarchy or
Yeah.
abuse or something. Like that's, to me it's clear that,
To
especially
me,
by the
that was clear to me as well. That's what
yeah.
it came off of the whole time.
Uh, because if anything, she needs to be on more meds, drugs.
Yeah, and I'm like wondering like how was she acting when they first got together? Is this a guy who couldn't get women normally and he kind of took advantage of her mental
Well,
clarity and
took advantage is the f- phrasing that I was thinking of, because like
yeah.
I've just like with abusers, it's they smell weakness like a shark smelling blood in the water, and they go after it. They will find any chink in your psychological armor and like put a explosive tipped arrow like freaking Rambo in it. You know, so that could easily be it. He found a woman, and then like she could have, because of her mental health, who knows, like had trouble her whole life romantically. We even, one of the first scenes in the movie, we see her like in order to get emotional fulfillment, like being going to a bar and just picking up a random guy and just like being loose, let's say. Probably not the nicest way to say it, but it's like there's an emotional basis for that. And like some of these people who have been emotionally deprived all their life, because God knows what our childhood was like, we don't really get any of that. Like if they get an inch, they want a mile. Like they're gonna fall in love quickly, or at least think they do.
Yeah. I think the very beginning of the film, the scene at the beginning where she's trying to get the kids prepared to go with the grandma is already setting the fucking stress level high. It feels like a microcosm of the movie in a way. I don't know. It's just like to me, I don't know how it was for you, but for me, a lot of this movie was reaching stress levels of like uncut gems for me. It was a nightmare in a lot
Yeah,
of ways.
I understand that it wasn't quite that with me. For me, it was weirdly introspective. I don't know. Because I was just thinking about like human relationships, and how people act, and class issues, and all these things.
Yeah.
Um, and that was just the headspace. I totally get how in another headspace it could be Uncut Gems level
It
of,
was like, okay,
even
this,
though it's not, because it's Cassavetes, it's not cut and shot that way. It's not as explosive, you know.
yeah,
He has an almost like he's a very naturalistic, like
yes.
almost documentary style sort of shooting, which I mean it works brilliantly for this because you feel like you're in the house. You feel like you're there watching mom and dad fight.
Well, it feels like you're across the yard at the beginning, watching her go back and forth
Yeah,
from
like
the
you're a
house,
neighbor.
get the bike, ride the bike over instead of just carrying it. Just all these little like details that set up her character and how she acts. It's brilliant setup. But I was like, wow, is the rest of the movie going to be this stressful? Yes, it will be.
Right. What's also incredibly stressful, but it's also like because the movie it definitely it has its more explosive moments, you know,
Yeah.
but it's simmering the whole time. Like there is no really rest for the audience. So
Yeah.
I understand why executives are like nobody wants to watch this for, over 2 hours, but
Yeah.
it's great. It's classic. And it's that thing where like getting you've either been that kid or been that parent of like trying to wrangle kids for a family vacation or a weekend to grandma's or something where it's just like get in the car, screw you, do that. It's like Seinfeld has a joke where he talks about he's like, no, I've like wrangled the kids and get them tied up on their chairs and making sure my wife is happy and everything. And I shut her door and I walk around to the driver's door and that's my vacation. Talking about that moment. That's how it feels.
Well, before, because I went in completely blind. So at this point,
Yeah.
up until,
Yes, I did at least know this is about a woman with issues, but you went in even blinder
but
than that.
for me, it was like trying to figure out, okay, so is she gonna just be like an alcoholic or something in this movie because of her marriage? And you're kind of leaning towards that because the setup is her husband, construction, working class guy. This is the one time that they've planned to have the kids out of the house. It seems pretty normal so far. She just seems like a stressed out mom. And okay, she's desperately trying to get these kids out of the car. She must need this bad or something. And then the water main breaks and this guy's not going to be able to come in because it's like an emergency. He's not going to be able to come back.
Right.
And he does feel guilty about this. And
But
it does
not
take
that guilty.
not that guilty, but like enough to be like worried about it. And because he does call her and he swears he's going to take all day off the next day.
It seems like he waits to call her though,
Yeah.
because his almost like his because he's a foreman or whatever you call him, and it's like one of his workers is almost like who know way too much about his life. I would be
Yeah.
like, I'm not bringing all my coworkers over to my house like that.
Different kind of thing. I get it
Different
though.
kind of thing, but we'll get into that in a second. But yeah, somebody and he's like, oh my god, what's the point? She's already going to be like stressed out. The kids are already out. It's like the point is you're like just communicating. Also, like I don't know, you do that. You call if you can't be there because women be shopping, women be women. You know what I mean? Like you gotta check.
It's
um,
it sets up his insecurity
yeah,
with
very
her
insecure.
mental because he takes the time to be like, Mabel's not crazy, she's unusual. And like
Special woman, which is probably what he probably thought some of those behaviors were when they were smaller and more controlled, cute. It's almost like guys who think like a certain amount of jealousy or something is cute in a woman, and then it gets out of hand
ugh.
as time goes on. Stuff like they're out there, man.
No, I know they're out there. And it
It's
ain't me.
no hell no, dude. Because how am I gonna cheat? But that was a joke.
I know.
Yeah, I'm saying for our listeners.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we have this, and even then, it's almost because being under the influence in the title is not under drugs and alcohol, as we've already mentioned, you know, and but it is sort of I guess a red herring where we see her drinking, and now like alcohol exacerbates mental health issues if you have them, but it's one of those where like that's not the real problem. People even later, like her psychiatrist who comes, like tried to like pin it on that, which it's just like the laziest thing to pin it on. To say like, oh, it's because you're drinking, not to ask like, oh,
Yeah.
why is this person drinking? Why is this person addicted to drugs? Are there social factors? Are there economic factors? But I mean, she does that. It's like pouring fuel on the fire, and that's when we see her go to the bar and be very forward with the first guy she sees. You know,
Yeah, because up to this point, I'm like, oh, is she just done with this? Is this the final straw with her man? Is she gonna get drunk and make a mistake and just be an alcoholic the whole movie? But this is a total, yeah, red herring. It's a pivot in a way. Because this guy, first of all, it's showing a lot about her husband in this movie and possibly preying on her, and then every other man in this movie. Because the next man in this movie is this guy who just saw her drink an entire glass of Seagram's, and then he's instantly like, "Hey, you want to come back to my house, or I'll go back to your house?" Is willing to carry her inside and all that. So she's getting preyed on immediately.
I mean, yeah, we in thank God we're past the first 60 seconds of this video because like in the first 10 minutes of this movie, we witness a rape. Essentially, she's too drunk to consent. She's
I didn't know
being.
if it was clear that they had sex or not.
I think they did. I think. I mean, that's what it seems like to me, at least. Otherwise, why would he stay over there? He seems like the kind of guy who would like justify it, and then if he couldn't get what he want, leave. But
Yeah, because that makes it more fucked. Because then he has the audacity to say some shit to her while she's in the bathroom or whatever, like saying like, "Oh, if you think I'm not gonna guy, I'm not. I'm not gonna be whatever he says." Like, it's like, dude, you're the one who carried her in drunk.
yeah, well, they didn't have those awareness campaigns back in the day. Um, and she calls him Nick, which is a huge
Yeah, that as soon
and
as she says calls him Nick, I'm like, oh, we're in some territory I was not expecting here. This woman has actual mental like problems. Like how crazy, and then it was a game of how crazy is she? And I know that might be a problematic way to phrase it, but
right. I also think it's very interesting that she's in a behind the door that says private. It's like it's almost like I don't know. It reminded me of like my papa had a room where he'd take his nap as a kid, but this is with your mom. It's like mom's crazy. She needs her space. That's what
she
it
needs
feels
a
like.
safe space, and it's constantly being infringed on throughout the movie.
Yeah,
That's what I feel like it is.
because they have their upstairs bedroom and then they have a little like
Nook.
nook pull out couch where
Yeah.
there's you know it's really interesting, unusual and interesting, and maybe I just because I'm not from that part of the country, like design for a house because it's
Yeah.
kind of a townhouse, but it has like a really wide and narrow downstairs,
Still big
basically.
enough to have a fucking full-on party.
Yeah, really nice kitchen. I was jealous of that kitchen. They had two stoves with ovens. I was like, that's yeah, nice. um
Yeah. I feel like
but
no, there's a lot of movie kitchens out there that I love.
I'm a big
I'm
guy.
like, first of all, even movies today, I'm like, why? It's always showing how blandly put together most houses around here are. It's just like slapped together. No character anymore. Millennial gray, just boring. And it's like when I try to shoot short films, it doesn't have the character I want in the background. It's like I have to find someone whose house was built in like the 70s or 80s to have any
Yeah,
sort of character. But that's just a
it's
side note.
no, it's a sad truth. It's a sad truth. You get a lot of your like subdivision cookie cutter, houser apartments. Hard to do. Even in more modern movies, I'd recognize doors. I'd be like, oh, that door is the same door that I've had on my bedroom because it's whatever mass produced door from
Yeah.
whatever company. Um, but and we do that. Guy comes home. And what's crazy to me is like they've been out all night. It looks like he got like 4 hours of sleep, maybe, if that, and then like got called back or whatever. It's like
Yeah.
basically it looks like the guy hasn't slept in like 24 hours, and then they're all having like a spaghetti breakfast.
Yeah, that's a nightmare scenario at first because I'm like, oh, is this guy still going to be in that house when Nick brings his entire crew over? But this guy was already gone by
Well,
then.
that's one of the Cassavetes does not play by script writing rules, and like
Yeah,
he sets that up, and it's solely for characterization.
yeah,
That's it. But it's still important to the story,
yeah.
which is what plot cells don't get. Is like something can happen and it can be important to the story and not important to the plot. You know,
Yep.
it's because we get that. And then she's very loving and doting. And you do get some complexities because even though as the movie learns, I'm like we learn Nick is straight up an abuser, you know, even if he wasn't considered by the standards of his time, you know, like a lot, you know, like people back then might have argued, like, well, if you slap your wife once in a while, you're not an abusive husband. Sometimes you need, but we've all seen that Sean Connery, Barbara Walters interview where he tries to justify that behavior. But
Yeah.
the, there is a little nuance, like in a sense of genuine community because it does seem like even though he's going through a rough time and he's being an ass to his workers to some degree, like his workers seem to like Nick and his family, you know, Nick and Mabel, and um, or at least you know like tolerate.
Yeah.
They all clapped when he's like telling the guy off, like, "No, I'm seeing my wife tonight. We're not doing extra work." Blah blah blah. Um, and they're all helping in the kitchen. Like he's helping in the kitchen. I thought it would be a more cliche, like she's doing all the work. She's having to be the doting, you know, almost like third world wife, like with like can't vote, has to cook all the time. But there is more of that. Very Italian in that sense.
It was very cozy kind of working class, old Americana kind of vibes for sure. And but it's also a curiosity of she's very adamant about cooking spaghetti. And this kind of comes back later when it's like 7 in the morning and she's making a spaghetti dinner. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Which at first I was like, well, what else are you gonna make on short notice for like 20 guys? You know, you make a big pot of spaghetti. Like that's just what you could do. But also it's a control thing and it's brilliantly set up because I even noticed it on the set there were several cans of tomato sauce like sitting on this cabinet. I'm like, that woman has a lot of tomatoes. I'm like, how much spaghetti is this woman making? Like even
A
before it
lot.
got brought up. Yeah.
It really seems like this is the one thing that she likes to make and she feels comfortable making and she's good at and she makes it too much.
Yeah, it's sort of that thing where like neurotics or it's common with autistic people, although that's not what she is, of course. She seems more manic than anything. But um she's like also I think like that's her control, you know. And you could project like maybe that was like a childhood comfort food was for me. I love spaghetti. I mean, this movie made me want spaghetti. But the but like it's like a control thing. It's also it's unintentionally funny later in the movie when there's one guy who's like, if you're gonna have spaghetti, I can't stay. I'm not a spaghetti man. He's like saying it to her. Everybody's sick of it. But um yeah, you have this. But then there's this thing of like, what do you think of her having trouble remembering people's names? How do you interpret that or view that?
Well, it was not just names. She's like, some guys are like, hey, I've met you before a couple weeks ago. I think this is showing that she's might be worse off than anyone might have realized. And it may be progressing in a way that they don't even know about. I don't know. Because at this point, when she is at this level, that's when I'm watching and I'm wondering, well, if she's this bad off, then how is she able to even raise three kids? How has this been going along this far before having to intervene? Because, I
She's not
mean,
really able to raise three kids that well, is the thing.
yeah, she gave birth and raised three kids, but all she can do is make spaghetti and forgets who people are. And there's that, she has, her social skills have diminished because she's being very endearing to these men, but then she starts getting awkward when she's like when one guy's singing and she's like looking into his mouth to see that it's really him singing and like then she's making like she keeps calling that one guy handsome and then it just gets a little awkward
Yeah,
to the point where,
but then Nick, played by Peter Falk, by the way, right?
yeah,
Um, explodes, and that of course just makes the whole thing boil over with that
yeah,
attitude. Um, I do understand, like, I've definitely been in those situations where I'm at a party or something. I'm kind of nervous because it's a bunch of people I don't know, and I start like going through a social script almost of like asking people like who they are or stuff. But I would remember people's faces even if I didn't remember their names. The thing, it's almost like she doesn't remember their faces. Um, and I understand that like she's so nervous, but she's so dedicated to projecting normalcy. But she's mentally ill. Like her idea of what's normal is like, oh, let's all get up and dance at like 7 in the morning while eating spaghetti. Like to her that's normal, while everybody else it's deranged. Pretty much. It's pretty weird for a random construction. For also it's weird for my husband to bring 20 of his coworkers without a notice. Not on the first time, probably. Like, well, we know not on the first time, and just like expect her to cook for everybody. Um, and then for one guy to randomly start singing Italian opera out of nowhere. The whole situation's weird, to be fair, but
yeah.
it's
Well,
something else.
Cassavetes, he clearly wanted to examine the American mid-century suburban kind of nuclear family, also mental health, because mental health awareness in the 70s is not what it is today.
No, I would argue even today it's not what it is today.
Well, sure.
Because I mean it's weird. This movie made me think it's a double edged sword. Like mental health has been talked about a lot, but I think a lot of that's because of the pandemic. A lot of that is like corporations covering their asses for employee burnout. If an employee has problem, they want to be like, well, we had them watch a PowerPoint on burnout, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and it's I do think a lot of people's conception of mental health is like, yes, mental health is a thing, but like then that kind of ignores that, like, okay, but also there are people who have like chronic mental illness. Like that's still a thing. It's not just people experiencing burnout, or a lot of people who are like, I'm depressed because of this external circumstance, versus people who have chronic depression due to some imbalance in their brain. Although back then we had none of that really. I mean, you were like crazy or not. The word crazy is thrown around in this movie in a
Yeah.
way that it likely wouldn't be today. And a lot of that is because it's blue collar. People aren't going to psychoanalysts and talking about Freud or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, it's not Woody Allen, I guess is what I'm saying. It's not neurotic Manhattan Jews. Um, but no, it is something I think a lot of, like the amount of shit that was just pushed down. And a lot of it is we didn't have social media for people to talk about this stuff, but like, the amount of abuse that went on, the amount of alcoholism. I think a lot of alcoholism was just normalized back then. I think because old movies, dude, people are always drinking. People drink more in old movies than they do now. For all the supposed moral decay that we see, I
Yeah.
feel like it used to be classy to just like have like cocktails are classy, or wine is classy, and people were just like dry drunk, like, or they were not dry drunks. That's not the word, but I mean, there are plenty of functioning alcoholics, or like their level for what was considered dysfunction was a lot higher than it is now. That was just what you did,
Yeah.
and
And
that's examined in this movie in a way that's kind of ahead of its time,
for sure. And
while
it's
also acknowledging that the drinking is symptomatic. It's not a cause, at least in Mabel's case. Continue. What were you saying?
damn. I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, just the way mental health back then, it's like the problem is that everyone still, even back then, like probably worse in the 50s and 60s, but even back then it was like they're willing to stuff down anything they can for the sake of social acceptability. Like you don't want to make a scene, you don't want anything to be awkward, you don't want the neighbors to talk. So anything they can do to hush it up or stuff it down, they're going to. And I think we see a lot of that here. And
For sure. Now we just don't talk to our neighbors. That's how we solve that.
yeah, now there's no social skills.
Now there's no social network except for what's online, so people don't have to worry about losing social support because they don't have any. So that's progress.
Well, I've said this on here before. I forgot what episode, but I said that like everyone should be entitled to one big crash out a year without getting judged, as long as it's non-violent and not hurting anyone. Like everyone kind of, I feel like you see want someone have an actual mental breakdown and either you feel sympathy or I see a lot of people, especially if it's being filmed in public or something, everyone has this judgmental view towards
Yeah,
it.
I hate that. It was really big when like Karen was like trending, the term Karen,
Yeah.
and it was just like, oh, look at this Karen. I'm like, no, these are people who need lithium. Like this, these women are manic, and you're acting like somebody being rude to the waiter and somebody being mentally ill are the same thing.
Yeah.
That's just not true. I'm not defending their behavior,
No,
but
no, I'm not either. I just feel like people underestimate how quickly, and it's situational, obviously, but how quickly you might devolve for a moment. Your mental health might deteriorate and you might act a certain way that you wouldn't normally. And people try to act like they're always balanced so well, but even someone who has
well,
their shit together can fall apart. And
also so many people have bad behaviors that like don't necessarily meet criteria for pathology, but that are just as toxic as or more as like the occasional breakdown or depressive episode. You know what I mean? Like they're
yeah,
like I've been joking. I've been thinking recently about like I think certain mental illnesses in American society, like narcissism and sociopathy, are rewarded. I'm not the first to say that, but like I think there are times where it's like you're insane, and that's why you're a good CEO because you're a crazy person. You just happen to have the right kind of crazy.
yeah.
Um, but that's definitely a thing here. This woman's not a Karen though. She seems like she'd be overly nice to
No,
waiters.
yeah. Of course, I'm not trying to say,
Oh, I know you're not.
any bad behavior like Karen bullshit. No, I get that.
Well, what is this is what I was gonna say. One of the wisest things anyone's ever said to me was in college, my German professor, who was German. I was having a rough semester, and I was talking to him, and he said the most German thing ever. He was like, I think everybody should be depressed 2 weeks out of the year. I think everybody should be depressed for 2 weeks, get that perspective because it offers perspective. You get it out and then you can live on your life. I think that would be ideal. Like, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense to me. But it is an issue.
I think about I try to be very emotionally balanced when I can. I think about this time in sixth grade when I guess I was having a lot of hormonal imbalances, with puberty or whatever, emotional, I don't know. But just like something made me freak out and I like dropped to the floor in the middle of the cafeteria in the line for food and like was like crying on the ground and everyone was just like, "Oh, this guy's crazy as fuck."
Yeah,
And I felt weird about it. And it's like thinking back, it's like that's not how I am. That's not how I acted, but it is. Yeah, I know it's different because I was a 12-year-old, but like I don't know.
yeah. And God, I hate this, and I'm not trying to one up, but if I had a nickel for every time like something like that happened to me in school, I had issues, and still do. But it's something. Her relationship with her children is really odd too. Well, both of their relationship with their children. It's weird. This movie really got me to worry about children that don't exist.
Yes.
Like it really, which is that's a successful movie. If I'm worrying about the adulthood of these children characters that aren't real, I'm like, how is this going to affect them when they grow up? You're doing something right. Um, because the whole movie now, especially toward the end and in the final scene, especially, we learn like Nick is abusive to them. There's a scene we'll talk about later. There's a sort of mandatory fun scene
Oh
that's
my God.
like really dark, very, very
Takes a turn.
divorced dad. I only get them 1 week in the month. We're going to have fun or else energy.
Yeah.
And the but there's also this thing, and I've seen mothers do this, and I think it can be really damaging for the children. And I because I've seen it. I've just seen it. Just try. I'm not gonna go into detail. I've seen it.
Yep.
Of like emotionally needy parents, like parents who like they put a burden of their adult emotions and adult needs on their children because they're not getting it from other places. Like I'm not saying to the point where like you can't, get things from your children. Of course you should. That's part of parenthood. That's like the good part of being a parent. But um it's there's a point, there's a line, I wrote it down, where she's like, I never did anything in my entire life except I made you guys. And I do feel like that's this thing where parents like project everything, all their hopes and dreams, they project everything. They
Yes.
project everything onto their children, and like whether they're usually not aware that they're doing it. And like I think it is, the kids on some level will pick it up, or they'll at least pick up on like the emotional vibrations and neediness of that. And like I think that can really mess up children, and it really affects her emotional dynamics and relationship dynamics later in their life.
No, I'll get fully transparent. I feel like my mom has never said anything. My mom's always been careful to never say anything like that that would make me feel bad. But like, it's the fact that she has always talked about how she knows her purpose in life was to have three kids and raise these kids, and it gives me it always gave me a level of what's the word I'm looking for?
Responsibility,
Yeah,
or
and it's
or
like
even like debt.
yeah, it's almost
Even
it's like I in the very back of my head I almost feel this guilt because I know deep down I did not become the adult she probably envisioned when she had me. I'm not this, all-American Republican linebacker or something, or, something like that. So, I'm just saying, just like she would never ever say anything to that degree, but I can't help but feel that way for years growing up. Like, oh, she quote unquote and gave up her life to have three kids. She didn't have to have three kids, but uh, but
yeah,
she did.
yeah,
But
close your legs. Why don't you?
there's this
Sorry, that was me.
inherent there's an inherent guilt there, whether she knows it or not, that I felt growing up. So
Yeah, no, it's a thing, and I think parent like it's impossible. Kids naturally want to like get the approval of their parents, and some of that's natural, and so like some of that's going to develop. I think regardless, even in the healthiest like parent child relationships,
yeah,
and just disclosure, neither of us have children, but um
this movie does not do it any favors of making me want to have children.
no, or get married, or be a utility worker, or live in America, or anything. I don't want to do anything that's in this movie except eat spaghetti. um, but it is a thing because, like, I do think, like, was it this situation, which this keeps bringing me to that situation of like, was it she was relatively more stable? Nick saw something in her, or just thought she was cute, or saw a vulnerability, got her pregnant, and then is like, okay, well now they're pregnant, and oh, they ended up spitting out a couple more because they're married. Because like, oh, well, he needs a playmate, da, 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 that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, like it. So any dreams she had were, which is the story that's been told billions of times. Like, motherhood took over her life. Because of that.
Yeah, I'm
That's
dying
that's
to
that's what I
see.
read into it.
I'm dying to see her just even just 2 or 3 years before this, just to see what was different.
Right. And again, that's what makes the movie so dang interesting, you know.
And when there's a level of when it's not just outright stereotypical abuse from the husband, when it's more of like a creeping kind of thing, he's getting more and more stressed out. Of, that's going to exacerbate things, but you wonder how how many times has he made her feel uncomfortable or slapped her around before this? Because it's like he does that thing where something happens and then he flips a switch. Because right after he yells at her at the table when they're eating spaghetti and everyone leaves, after they're alone, he's like advocating for her and like saying, "Oh, you didn't do anything wrong. Don't worry." Blah blah blah. And then there's that backhanded, disgusting comment where he says, "I don't mind you being a lunatic."
Ugh, yeah.
He's trying to say it in an endearing way, like "I love you for who you are," but it's so backhanded and disgusting.
No, it's really textbook abuser behavior. You know,
Yeah,
I don't think a lot of people just don't realize what abuse looks like, but
yeah.
that's definitely
It's
it.
not the joke stereotype. Oh, you burned my dinner. I'm wearing a wife beater. I'm gonna beat the shit out of
The
you.
fact that we call sleeveless t-shirts wife beaters
Yeah,
is so
there you
ridiculous.
go.
I had this Bulgarian guy talk to me once about when he learned that. He said this was in New York. He was like a worked in advertising or something. He was like, "Yeah, I went to Macy's and I was trying to describe what I want." And the cashier was like, "Oh, you mean a wife beater?" And he's like, "The fuck? What?"
Oh my God,
Like
dude.
it just like take it out of context. If you're like learning American English, you're
Yeah,
like,
that's crazy to think
like
about.
what? That's like if I was wearing I was looking for a pair of jeans in France. I was like, "Do you have those like, the blue pants?" And they're like, "Oh, you mean dog fuckers?" I'm like, "What are you talking
You're trying to hang up your clothes and they're like, "Oh, you mean an embryo killer?" Like,
about?"
whoa. Yeah.
Oh man.
Anyway. But yeah, after that scene, it's like, okay, I see what Cassavetes is really trying to paint a portrait of here. And also the different moms, her mom and his mom, the way that they interact and themselves kind of exacerbate things. And like the grandma's trying to take him to the school and ask, like, and the dad, what's his name? Nick is asked to come in, even like right after coming in after working all night, is asked to come in. Oh my God. And he's like, tell him I'm not Superman. And then she tells her that and hangs up. And then the mom takes the kids after like, I don't know, it's like a weird, she must be aware of maybe the wife's dwindling mental health, but she doesn't seem to want to step in and try to approach any of it at all. She's just like there to be a nanny.
Are you talking? Yeah, you're talking about the mother-in-law,
Yeah.
about Nick's mom. She gets more involved later, and
Well, no, I'm talking about, well, there's two moms.
oh, there are. Oh, there are different characters.
Yeah, the first mom is more of like just standing by, and then it's Nick's mom who's being like more direct with everything.
Yeah, no, she is the like she avoids being a stereotype, but the role is very.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is, to be honest. Like the mother-in-law who just like butts her nose in because that's her baby boy and is trying to do it, and like how much pressure that can add to a marriage if you have a
And how
bad.
much of being a
I mean,
boy
there's a
mom.
whole trilogy called Meet the Fockers or Meet the Parents that's about this very thing, played for laughs, but it's clearly relatable enough to a lot of people where like there's a basis in reality for this. But when you put it in this scenario, it gets so toxic because you
Well,
do
how
have that
much?
thing. That's another thing where like, so I believe all relationships are conditional. Like people don't like thinking about that or hearing that. I've heard some people say, I've even heard the phrase like every relationship is conditional except for like mother and child, and I'm like, even that's conditional. Absolutely is. But the which that's just human nature. I don't know, like if you're, I don't know, if somebody's just shitting you all the time, then like, yeah, conditionally you're not going to like them very much. That's a very incredibly oversimplified version of it. But like, I think it's uncomfortable to see like it portrayed so starkly in this, because like you have like a mother-in-law who like does probably helps with the kids certain things, but like by having an extended family member help you in parenting or whatever it is, like then you kind of have to listen to their bullshit a little more. you
Yeah.
know and this goes into anything. It's somewhat transactional. And I was gonna say one thing I noticed, and this is another just speculation, but Nick is on the phone with his mom, who's like complaining of a stomach ache, and like we don't get a lot of that, but I'm thinking like, this is maybe a reaching. Is his mom like a hypochondriac and like a not fully mentally ill like Mabel is, but like a neurotic, let's say? Like, is his mom a neurotic, and this is like a similar family dynamic to what he grew up in, maybe
Yes,
more
I
extreme.
believe
'Cause,
so.
yeah,
I think because like it really just like she's calling him because she didn't have to call him about this issue at all.
yeah, stomach ache. Okay,
It's
it
it's
takes him out
very
because
much an indication that he was probably a boy mom. She was a boy mom and he was babied, and a lot of being a boy mom is how so much of abuse happens, whether these boy moms realize it or not. They're setting up their precious baby boy to not uh
experience hardship,
well,
and
yeah,
that way
but
that
also just they blame anything that might go wrong in a relationship on the woman and not
right, so they don't
him.
have to grow emotionally.
Yeah. And so that probably, so he's probably emotionally stunted growing up because of that. And that's why all of this creeping up on him is causing him to have more and more outbursts and not being able to understand how to tackle this issue. And that's why it escalates to him putting her in a nut house.
Yeah,
And it's
which
pretty
is which
brutal.
is such a, we don't even have those as much anymore, thanks Reagan. But it's why we have so many homeless now. And it's such a, ooh, it pisses me off. Like it really, no, it really pisses me off. Of like, we're just gonna send this to this place, like, so they can be cured.
Sarah Connor.
It's yeah, exactly the same. No, Sarah. The problem is Sarah Connor's not crazy. Sarah Connor's right.
Yeah,
The
she's actually
machine,
completely right. Yeah.
Judgment Days is coming.
Yeah.
the No, but we do have that. I mean, before we get into the institutionalization,
Yeah.
like let's talk a bit more about like it starts to escalate. I mean, it gets to the point where like there's a neighbor who I guess they've at least know each other in passing, or maybe their kids go to school together, probably. Um, and she starts going full manic mom mode. Oh, let's not do homework, let's make costumes, because
Yeah.
like the approval of these children, I'm so emotionally needed, is more important than their education. um and because like she's even like earlier they're like, oh, do the kids need to go to school, da, 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 and like even later in the movie the principal is like, are the kids going to be in school tomorrow? There's like clearly issues with attendance and them
Yeah.
you know being educated. And the she needs, and then this neighbor's like, I don't trust you being around. Like, I don't trust leaving my kids with you, you're crazy. you know you're dancing
Something's
around to
off.
Swan
Yeah.
Lake telling them to die for me, asking them to like act like they're dead. um and then Nick doesn't help with it. But like it escalates to this point where like, and this is another thing where like it's indirect storytelling. A psychiatrist comes over, or some sort of doctor professional, and like clearly they know him. It's not like this is his first time here, and they're talking about sedating her and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then of course the mother-in-law is like giving comments. Like, it's one thing to like make comments from the thing at the Thanksgiving dinner table, but
Yeah.
if you're standing in my stairway giving if my mom was standing in my stairway giving me advice while there's a psychiatrist like potentially about to sedate my wife and she's like giving her peanut gallery comments during that,
Yeah.
like this guy has to be a mama's boy because I
That's the
would
difference is you're not a mama's boy.
yeah, that's the
So
difference.
of
I would be
course you
like,
would be rational here.
no, I would be like, hey, this is not your marriage. You need to leave. Frankly, like, you just need to not be here right now. But no, it's absolutely insane. And I
This
think
guy
that
also doesn't have the intelligence to know a better way to navigate it. He just says, "Oh," in his mind, it's like, "Well, we better bring a doctor in here because this is." It kind of reminds me a lot of my dad in a lot of ways of just kind of like a brute kind of
yeah. But this
almost
guy
like
didn't grow up in the Soviet Union, also.
yeah, well, my
So
dad's got that third world mentality for
yeah,
sure.
he at least has you said it on me, third world mentality. But it's so I'll just say that this is something I've been coming like I was for a brief time, not 6 months. Jesus, it was like 6 days, not even 6 days.
Yep.
But like I was institutionalized against like involuntarily committed when
Yep.
I was a child, and like it didn't help anything. Like it was stupid. It was bullshit. It didn't
Yep.
help. It was just like my parents didn't know what to do with me. It was almost was like a punishment more than anything. Um, and like it's a bunch of like stressed out, overworked social workers, like um, and then you're locked in there with people who are like even crazier. Like my level of crazy, which is imagine me being locked in with like somebody of like this movie's level of crazy.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's not going to help me. That's not a good environment to convalesce,
No.
And then also like, yeah, you're out of people's hair, but like, are you actually learning skills that translate to the real world, or are you just like conveniently out of the way? It reminds me of a lot of like the holdovers, how the mother puts like her son in a prep school and her husband in a psych ward and just kind of like puts them out of sight, out of mind. It's the same mentality. It's about the same era too. It's the
Go
movies are,
check that episode out. I love that episode that we did on that.
yeah, I love that episode. I love that movie.
Side note. Peter Falk's character reminds me of my dad in a lot of ways that it made me
You know
even
what? I'm gonna say it.
more angry.
He reminds me of your dad in a lot of ways too.
A lot of ways that you don't even know about.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
But
I don't even
I think
there. I won't
about
go into. You've told me enough where, like, and just because I know I'm going to be talking, I don't always compare like characters in movies to your dad. But if I know I'm going to be talking about the movie, I mean, I'm
yeah,
with.
I think
Um,
about when I had a family member try to kill themselves and we went to visit them in a mental hospital, and my dad's first thing to say was like, "Why would you try to do that? Life is this, this, and this. When I was in communist Yugoslavia, we didn't have time to do this. We were too busy picking tobacco leaves and stuff." I'm like, dude, this guy just has no concept of anything. He
right.
never wanted me to have medicine for depression or anxiety as a kid. Like he's just like, well, he just needs to get over it. So it's that kind of shit.
Well, I mean, like, there's it's like, yeah, you couldn't afford to be depressed because of that, but you were still depressed and people were still alcoholics. You're telling me in the Soviet Union there weren't alcoholic abusive fathers? You're telling me that people in the Soviet Union weren't depressed? Dude, fuck off. And by the way, I thought of that exact episode because you've told me about it. Like that's what I was thinking of during this movie. Like as it relates to your family. That my own, brief stint. It wasn't for a suicide attempt.
It's also
Um,
just like a shame to see Peter Falk in this light because I like him so much as in Columbo.
I like him in Columbo. I love him in The Princess Bride, and I love him in Wings of Desire. Like I love Peter
It's
Falk.
like I don't want to relate you to my dad, man. So you've seen Columbo? Have you seen the first episode?
I've not. I've never. I've seen clips. I'm
Okay,
not.
you need to
You're
watch
you're
the
more.
first
You know way
episode.
more about old TV than I do.
You gotta watch the first episode because people always say Duel is Spielberg's first feature. Technically, you could say it's the first episode of Columbo because
Oh
it's
shit.
feature length.
Okay.
And I mean, right after the Fablemans, he's going off to make fucking Columbo. And when you think about it like that, like he was hired to shoot this pilot and you're watching it because I watched it not knowing this, and then I was like, this directing style seems so familiar. And people always try to say, well, Spielberg doesn't have a
Bullshit.
directing
Bullshit.
style. Bullshit,
Bullshit.
because I was like, this is so familiar. Who fucking directed this? And then the drop says directed Spielberg, and I was like, I was like, I knew it. But yeah, it's definitely worth watching at least the first episode for the Spielberg
Oh,
lore.
no, I'll seek that out. I'm sure it's on YouTube or whatever.
And like doing like, yeah, because like it's ahead of its time with like trying to do more prestige television back then, you know.
Right. There's even some of the exposition drop of like when he's like in the truck with his coworker talking about like my wife's, unusual, da da da. Even the way he's saying it is almost like how Columbo will like pepper with information. And I'm not saying it in a bad way. I think
No,
it was
yeah.
good, but it did make me think. It was that sort of like, sort of thing.
Yeah. And we did an episode Wings of Desire where he plays himself doing a movie in Germany. I thought that was so cool. Go check that episode out. We have a lot of episodes that connect in different ways, y'all. Just you guys
Yeah.
gotta seek them out if you want.
Yeah, it's part of the Harbor Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
It's almost like certain actors are in different movies and you can
Dude,
make
you blew
parallels.
my mind just now. I can't believe this.
Yeah, dude, it's almost like you can look at an actor's career and see different threads and how
No
they
way.
intertwine. It's crazy, dude.
What? But it's like, okay, so what I like about her, the wife, is that she is very motherly and endearing when she is with her kids. Now, it's like such a strange. She obviously is having trouble with time and remembering who people are and stuff like that because she's walking around the street, almost just like walking in the street, almost like a vagrant or something, waiting for the kids to get out of school. And she's even asking around and like getting kind of in their faces, like almost like she's a drug addict. Like, do you know what time it is? Like verbally assaulting a woman in the street for
Yeah.
not knowing the time.
No, it is. Although I was kind of on her side. I'm like, just tell her what time it is, dude.
Yeah, I
You
know.
know,
It's just the way she was approaching it seems so weird. And as soon as
no,
the kids,
it's that if you go into a big city, you have those moments where you're like, this guy's trying to talk to me and he's going to pretend like he's not going to ask me for money, but it's going to lead to that.
this
So I'm just
person
going to
wants
ignore the
something.
whole. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm just going to ignore the whole thing.
yeah.
It's awkward for everybody
No, I
involved.
get that. But it's like she has this weird energy, and then the
Yeah,
next scene when she does get her kids off the bus, she transforms back into that very endearing, motherly person.
well, she has.
And we have that small moment, that reflective moment, very genuine. I don't think she's pulling for anything. I think this is very genuine when she's asking them if they see her as like dopey or mean. And her son says, you're smart, you're pretty, and stuff like that. She herself has this kind of childlike wonder in this scene, which of course is going to work in relating to small children, and small children are going to, kind of treat her better and understand her better, I think, than most of the adults in her life. So I found that very compelling in that characterization.
Yeah. No, it is that thing. It's like I don't know, it just made me think of like a friend's older brother growing up who I thought was the coolest, and then I became an adult. I'm like, oh, that guy's like stunted development. That's why I thought he was so cool. That's why I thought he was so cool as a
Yeah.
kid. I
Oh
think
my God.
sometimes when I'm in a bad mood, I'm like, is that why my younger cousins like me? Because I'm like that guy. I'm not. I don't still live with my mom. So
No, because they kids really like and can tell when you're not just talking down to them and you're
yeah, they
really trying
really
to
do.
they're when you're being on their level and not trying to be, oh, well, isn't that cute? Isn't that fun? You're
Yeah.
really trying to be one on one with them. They really respect that and they dial in on that.
No, it's because I remember and that's one reason I'm so sensitive to it now is like I remember I would get talked down to as a kid, and like it would, especially as like a precocious child, and it would drive me nuts.
The
You know?
immediate disconnect. It's like,
Yeah, I'm
okay,
just like, oh, this guy thinks I'm an idiot, or like he thinks I'm like 2 years younger than I actually am.
yeah,
Versus like, I I'll ask. I work in a movie theater. I'll ask kids genuinely what they thought of a movie. I'll just like if I'm like selling concessions or something, I'm like,
Yeah.
or like I'm legitimately interested in like what children's reactions are certain, and I'll also ask their parents. We're talking about Minecraft here. The reactions are one of them I've heard it's the best movie I've ever seen, and from the kids, and it was something from the adults. That's usually about what I get. Um, but yeah, no, I was like, at my coworker's kid was there and she saw Snow White, and I was like, what do you think? I was legitimately interested. I was like, what do you think? And she was like, it should have been better. I was like, okay,
Hey, you know,
that's all right. That's the legitimate opinion.
and that's real criticism because kids can be so obviously forgiving of films.
Oh yeah.
I would watch whatever.
Yeah, me
And,
too.
so when I didn't like a movie, that was
It was
pretty telling
bad.
to me.
It was bad.
But
Especially when we didn't have YouTube. We didn't have endless things to watch. So like if I went to a movie theater and didn't like the movie, that movie sucked, you know.
which is controversial because as a kid, I thought Atlantis, that Disney movie, sucked and everyone liked it except for me. But I think that movie's undercooked and
Yeah,
not that great.
you have like a vendetta against
I
that
don't have
movie.
a vendetta. I just like
You just think it's
pe-
overrated.
people try to
I
rope it
liked it as a
in
kid.
with like Lilo and Stitch and Treasure Planet in that era. I'm like, nah, those are both way better than this movie. But either way, um,
I didn't really like Lilo and Stitch that much as a kid.
man, I sure did.
And I'm a grown
But
man drinking from a Mufasa cup right now.
hey, man,
I need to
I,
drink out of it. I have my Minecraft cup over here.
oh shit.
I got this. We got to blur it out. That creeper on the top is blurred out, but you know.
Okay. Do you get that stuff?
No, we don't. Well, the Mufasa one got free because we didn't sell enough because that
Oh,
movie.
okay.
So it was like, well, we have this inventory and we're like the period to sell it is over. So here, take one if you want.
Yeah.
The Minecraft cup, this is maybe gross. I don't care. Somebody just like left it on the floor or something. I'm like, I'm just gonna take this home and wash it. I'm just
Okay. You know what?
like
Fuck it.
somebody bought this and then just left it, and I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna screw
I
it.
mean, it's the same as buying at a thrift store.
Yeah,
You
this is the
washed
same.
it. I don't think that's crazy.
No, it's not. You're right. They have glass.
But back to the film.
Yeah.
To this guy, Harold, I mean, to be fair, the optics here are bad. There are kids running around undressed, and she is like singing like Swan Lake and stuff. Like it is not a good look going on. So, I can understand him being like freaked out by like this the way she's acting, and she's just trying to have fun. It's like, oh, let's play dress up. It's a fun activity, but it's not regulated in the way that it should be, obviously. And but obviously Peter Falk's character Nick, when he comes home, this looks really bad. But it's also like it's the it's his fault for being a dead brains prick and assuming, oh, this guy's simply just sitting in this room, this man, so therefore something might be going on. I have to slap her and blame her for things, even instead of just asking what's going on.
Yeah, no, I have to project my authority because there's another man here and we have to have
Yeah.
a kissing contest. It's that there's a lot of class commentary here, but it doesn't feel classist. It doesn't feel like he's judging like every blue collar, like, well, this is just how blue collar guys are, because like you get pleasant, like from his workers, for instance, like you get people who seem a lot more pleasant, you know,
Yes.
than he does in this movie. So it's definitely able to point like the material conditions, and also this guy is like is um, you can the whole phrase like class in America is weird because it's not just about income. So it's like because this guy makes a pretty decent income, it seems like he's able to have a house and like three kids, like a decent house in what seems like a decent neighborhood, and like support them because he's a foreman. He's worked his way up. He's
Yeah.
older, it looks like he's a little bit older, and also he's just Peter Falk, so he probably chain smokes. But the so like it's this weird thing, but like you still have this mentality of like I have to hold on to this. It's status anxiety is what the like term for it is, you know. And that's why I think you can get like machismo in these sort of blue collar environments, because it's like I have to be a man and like hold on to what I have, and I have to like assert my power over certain things. Like
Yeah,
there's an insecurity of that, not just emotional insecurity, but financial insecurity. Even if it's in the past, it's still like in your like, you know, in your memory. So like you got to hold on to it, if that makes sense.
totally.
Yeah.
It's like, but he like, it's after this that he hits her and he's like yelling like, "You're gonna be committed" and stuff. Like, and then she's immediately rationalizing and saying, "Oh, you just you just got embarrassed. He made a jerk of himself. No big deal. He doesn't normally hit me. He's never really hit me before. It's not a big deal." Trying to like be fun and playful and like it's a mix of an abuse victim, but also possibly she doesn't fully grasp the situation at hand. I
No,
think
I
it's a,
don't. No, I don't think she understands like why this is
yeah,
bad, you
it's a
know, or why the neighbor is like concerned about her.
very complex dynamics in this film, which I
Yeah.
appreciate a
Oh,
lot.
incredibly. Cassavetes is the um it's so interesting the way he writes and directs. I mean it's very literary in a way, you know. Like it reminds me of like in the way that um a lot of the time like in movies things are very like plot points are emphasized or like broken up by scene, and here it almost like flows together, you know, in the way that like sentences do, and in the way that like relationships might be explored like throughout a novel versus this, if you know, if that tracks.
Yeah.
Um but no, so anyway, so then he commits her to 6 months, and then I think he realizes like, ah, shit, I gotta raise my own children now, which is the nightmare of any '70s dad, I guess. But
Yeah.
they're
And once again, you see shit spreading quickly at his work. Everyone cares. Everyone's asking if he's all right, but he's
yeah.
taking it as an offense of like, oh, they know something's wrong in my house. There's a problem. I don't want to
Well,
look bad.
it's but also like that's kind of your fault, and you're inviting people into your house with your mentally ill wife. I would be
Yeah.
listen. I would be if I were him and people were asking me those kind of questions at work. It would piss me off too. I'm just telling you.
No, I get that, but like it's a way of I
He's
mean, it's his
externalizing though. It's the same
yeah.
thing as like he's getting mad at that neighbor in his house because like what he really wants to do is like yell at his wife and like do all that, but
Yeah.
not to the degree that he wants to, you know. And now he doesn't have that to like fall back on. So now he has to externalize in other ways. He has to yell at his kids, mandatory fun, tell them to stop running at the beach,
Yeah.
stop running at the beach and go swim, stop playing in the sand and go in the water.
Fucking
Like,
nightmare shit for me. He's so desperate for a sense of normalcy that he thinks, well, I have to take you right now. I have to take these kids out of school right now so we can go to the beach so we can have this normal moment because it has to be normal, right? That's why I'm taking them out of school at 10 in the morning and making the principal feel uncomfortable and shit.
yeah, and snapping at her and then scaring
So
her.
aggressive and desperate to quote unquote relax. Yeah, okay. Which escalates to him letting his kids drink fucking beer and get drunk, which is really fucking dark. I did
No, it's
not.
really dark. I mean, it might be the darkest part of this movie for
Yeah,
me.
I was
Just
like,
because like it's like I don't know. This is gonna sound terrible out of context. Like I expected maybe to see like a woman get slapped around at some point, which is terrible, of course. But then like just like letting your kids drink enough to where like it seems like they got enough of a buzz where they just wanted to like crash in bed
yeah,
after. That's the implicated like that's you know insane. And it's again, it's not that you know cool uncle of like oh have a taste and then you're like bleh, you know.
you're 14, you're gonna have one sip of beer. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, it's not that.
This is like a 7-year-old kid getting to drink like half a beer and sip on it.
No, dude, it's like Amy Poehler and Mean Girls being trying to be the cool mom and being like, if you're gonna drink, I'd rather you do it at home here. You know, like it's that, but way worse.
Yeah, except these
They're
are not like
like
17 year
7,
olds.
8 year olds. Yeah, 8 at the most, maybe at the most. Um,
Do you feel any sense of sadness for Nick at all?
Dude, no, not a lot. I don't have a lot. By the end of the movie, I don't have a lot of sympathy for him.
No, I don't either.
I really don't. It kind of reminded me of Blue Valentine in that sense.
Yeah.
Like there's a similar parenting dynamic, except I don't know.
Well, yeah,
Um,
especially with like the way Gosling's character is like beyond gone. Like he's trying to get her to go 40 minutes to a hotel and all that, and it's already over basically. And
yeah,
like,
mandatory fun.
yeah,
That's what I'm
exactly. Yeah.
saying. Well, because one of the things throughout this movie, and especially like in the final scene, he keeps saying like it's okay, be yourself, but like he fundamentally rejects who she is because he's so deluded by his own idea about the lie of the American dream of like this is what you know a nuclear household should be. You know, um, it's so about that that like he can't see who his wife is, why she needs help. Somebody needs a fixer, like you're taking your car to a mechanic, like you're dropping off your car at the mechanic. And then we get to like I got anxious. You were talking about this movie made you anxious when I realized he was inviting like 30 people
No,
over.
like 60.
60, yeah, crammed into that place, including people she's never met when she's coming out of the hospital, like it's a graduation party or
Yeah,
something.
that is the biggest example of his disconnect is thinking that this would be a good idea.
No, and like the shrew of a of a of a mother-in-law even is like, hey, this is dumb. But I don't want to meet a bunch of people like that at a party, really at any time. Dude, if I let's take mental health out of it. If I had an appendectomy or was in a car wreck and was in the regular hospital for a few days, like I wouldn't want to come home to all that. I would be like, let's maybe my close family and like order some pizza and like rest, like
It's
that's what I want.
insane.
Yeah.
It's insane that, and like, he's rightfully called out and told, like, well, why would you do all this and not just go pick her up yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the biggest example right there.
No, because he wants a surprise because it's about him and it's
It,
up.
it is. And he reluctantly listens to him. And for a second, I'm thinking, well, okay, so he came to and realized this is a stupid idea. But no, he's still passive aggressive about it later when he's like, well, I thought it'd be a fun idea, having everybody here, it's a party. Aren't we supposed to be having a party? Even after that, when it's just like 8 people at the table. It's like, dude, shut the fuck up.
By the way, if I got out of the nut house and the psychiatrist who
Six
committed me
months.
6 months, and the psychiatrist who committed me was at the table, I would be like, "Why the fuck is this asshole in my house?" I never want to see
Yeah.
that guy again, dude. That's like you get out of jail and the cop that arrested you is at your house, dude. It's
I
like I
didn't
don't
even
want.
think about it like that. That is crazy.
It's like hell no, dude. This guy beat me
Go
with a
the
knife.
fuck home. Who
Yeah.
invited this asshole? Oh, he's a family friend. Oh, great. I'm glad the family friend is here. That is fucking insane shit.
No, to the point where like he's like, "Oh, be yourself," and he's like, "That's the end of the jokes." He even gets mad at jokes. She's like joking around. Normal, because I do that. I'll act weird in social situations when I like don't know what to do, and part of it's like like a blow off valve for like any sort of social anxiety, and then some of it's just like trying to control the situation. I don't go to that extreme. I mean, she wasn't even being that bad, but like and also and this is the thing about like the problem with like institutionalizing somebody is like yeah, once you're out of that structure, it's like the point of that is not to cure people. The point of that is like for people who cannot function in society and need to be like taken down to the level where they can at least function or at least get by, not excel. Like it's completely out of touch with like what the purpose of institutionalization is because you need outpatient care to continue after you have inpatient care. I mean that's just any you know clinical psychology undergrad could tell you that, dude.
Well, I knew immediately that she's yeah, she could probably use a break, but this isn't the kind of thing that's just gonna all go away after you're gone for six
Yeah, no
months. It's
shit.
delusional to think that. So of
Dude,
course,
6 months can make you worse. That's a long time.
knowing that, it's like there's no point in doing this. This is dumb. She needs a different kind of help. And of course, she looks sad and subdued. And he doesn't send all the people home in enough time because they're still coming out to her car and like getting in her face in the window of the car and saying, "Oh, it's so glad to see you" and
Which
stuff.
also I'm gonna say I'm gonna put some blame on the guests as well.
Yeah,
Like if somebody came up to me, I don't care if it's the 70s, dude, even if it's 70s, if somebody comes up to me, he's like, hey, we're having a welcome home party for somebody who was in the psych ward for 6 months.
yeah,
As soon as they get back, not the weekend of,
yeah.
as soon as they get back, like I would be like, what are you talking about? No. But is there going to be food there? Because then yes. But other than but other than that,
Now, I remember when,
and then going, yeah, no, it gives me such secondhand like anxiety when she's like, hey, you don't know me, I'm like the wife of this coworker whose name you can't remember. Like, why are you talking to me, woman? Because again, that's you wanting to feel good about reaching out, like with a lot of things. I feel complicated when I'm like, if I know somebody whose parent dies, I'm like, do I reach out and like express my condolences, or am I just doing that for me?
yeah,
Or they, and it depends on how well you know the person, but like, or or are they dealing with so much it's better if I just like next time I see them maybe talk it up, or even like next time you see them it's kind of unspoken, like you can give condolences without bringing it up if that makes sense.
yeah,
Like if something traumatic, like or somebody loses a parent or like something, whatever, somebody dies in their family, like you don't have to, it's like there's an unspoken like we both know what's like gone on recently and this is why I'm like acting like extra generous to you or something. Like we all know what's going on,
yeah.
you know. But I'm also not just going to bring it up because like I know one guy who and I'm not blaming anybody here. This is nobody, like it came up pretty naturally, but like a guy who was like a family friend whose kid had cancer, like young kid, as young as the kids in this movie had cancer, and like they brought it up in a in a restaurant, and like later at the bar we could see he had like tears in his eyes while he was like ordering a sandwich or something, like just
Yeah.
because bringing it up was that stressful for him. So it's anyway. But yeah, Nick's a dickhead in this scene, to
Well,
put
that
it.
scene, it reminded me of something that I experienced when I still lived at the Summit House. Shout out Summit of Saturn. But um, Savannah went to Australia for 2 weeks. And obviously, there's a major time difference, and it's like a 20-hour flight and all that. And she was on a long trip, and when she got back, her parents were insistent on like meeting her and like everyone going out for dinner and stuff, and she just wanted to relax and stuff
Oh yeah, you're jet lagged.
and decompress from the flight. And she had not slept in like 20 hours, and it was not just her parents, but her brother Bob showed up, and then he brought like three of his friends. And so now it's like eight people, like all standing in her apartment where she can't even like keep her eyes open. They're like, all right, let's all go out to eat and stuff like that. And it was like, I had the most secondhand embarrassment. I was like only there because I was trying to be the kind of like middleman because they did not, for some reason, understand that this is not the vibe at all. It was really awkward. And
Is incredibly awkward.
she could not even keep her eyes open at the restaurant. I'm like, why are you guys doing this?
Yeah.
She
Dude, and
doesn't
that
even
woman has like
like
the
going out to
lowest
eat.
constitution score of anybody I've met. Like she's failing rolls all over the place.
It was
But
really strange.
then we
It was
yeah, but
same
then we get to the
vibes.
climax of this movie where basically everybody gets kicked out because she's stressed out and like she isn't able to decompress. Um
You can tell she looks defeated, subdued,
yeah,
trying her best to try and reel it in because that's what she's been told for 6 months. You have to push it down.
yeah, such a good performance. Yeah, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure that's just what they did at psych hospitals in the 70s. They were just like, this is how you push it.
We're going to
But
train you to try and subdue your emotions.
yeah. There is one thing I will say, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, kind of did terrible things for. It came out a year after this, 1975, but like arguably like hurt the perception of psychiatric hospitals because some people need that. She mentions like electroconvulsive therapy. Electroconvulsive therapy is like one of the most effective treatments for severe depression and is not as bad as it's portrayed in like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I just wanted to
Yeah.
say that right now. I actually, if somebody needs it, somebody needs it, dude.
I know
Um,
it's just the way it sounds to people back then probably makes it sounds like, oh, this guy's nuts, so
yeah,
let
they
him
think
go
it's like a
electrocute his
lobotomy.
ass.
They think it's like a lobotomy or something.
Yeah.
It's like really cruel. Um, but they go through this. She immediately grabs a razor. It's like, dude, how bad of a husband are you? Or like, as soon as she gets back to your presence, she just wants to go back to the nut house. Like, it's
Yeah. Well, it's like he's dragging her away from this scenario and he's taking her and trying what he thinks is a private moment between a mother or a husband and a wife where he thinks he's trying to help her. And he's like urging her to quote, be yourself when
he doesn't
she's,
want her to be herself. He wants her to be a
and then
different
she's
person.
like, you're yelling this at her and she's crying and he's trying in his head to give her advice and say be yourself and stuff, but he's yelling it to her like he's a football coach, like a big brute gruff man, like come on, do this, I'm going to yell this at you, be yourself, even though that's why you were in the nut house, for being yourself. So it's just, of course it's going to escalate to this. And like, yeah, like
It's a
man,
huge problem. I
it was
mean,
a
then we get
fool's
to the
errand
point.
is
Then
what it
we, for
was.
the first time in the movie, we see like explicitly his anger go toward the kids. I mean, because he just any facade is
Yeah, it breaks. He slaps her off the
great.
couch.
Slams her off the couch. I'll kill you. I'll kill those sons of bitching kids.
Yeah,
Um, Tries to like fake apologize because he knew he let the mask slip. And then, I mean, really, maybe my favorite shot in the movie. It's really sad, and the symbolism is very obvious. Like the kids are the ones carrying her up the stairs.
yeah,
The kids are supporting her physically and emotionally, while the husband is downstairs, like yelling at her, basically. Um, She calls her kid spaghetti. She's like, I love you, spaghetti. It's very odd. Um, and then I think the last words of this movie is she's like, do you love me? And he's like, let's go clean up that crap. And
yeah.
like, she just kind of goes along with it because she's not all there. And that's the end of the movie. So I understand why executives would be like, nobody wants to watch this movie. But I mean, it is like a master class in, I guess, cinematic realism is how I would say it,
Sure.
and psychological realism. It is one of the most like psychologically textured, psychologically real movies I've seen. And for 1974, yeah, this movie, yeah, loved it. It
It
was
was
great.
very interesting though. Like as soon as she's with her kids and she's tucking them in, that is enough to like really calm her down. And suddenly she seems very relaxed and lucid. And she's like, I don't know how any of this even happened. I must be pretty crazy, huh? And that's it's kind of comforting to hear her talk so lucidly, but also like also very sad because she really just does not know how it escalated to all of this.
Because she's a woman under the
Yeah.
influence of Peter Falk,
Yes.
and it's all Peter Falk's fault.
And the way it just like the credits start over after they're just cleaning everything up, it hits you in the head with like, well, that's just American suburban life. Am I right, fellas?
Now I could imagine the lingering tension if I saw this in a movie theater when it came out.
Yeah.
Like how weird it would be to like imagine seeing this with like a full theater,
Yeah.
in the 70s and just being like, yeah, let's go home, honey. Great date.
Yeah. Great Valentine's movie.
Excellent. Anything else to add to this?
No, no, that's about it. I'm glad we did another Cassavetes. I think I like this one more than Chinese Bookie.
Me too, although that was also very good.
Yeah. Go check that episode out if you haven't seen that one, if you want some more Cassavetes talk. Other than that, We have over 180 episodes. Go check out any
So
episodes that
crazy.
you might want to see that you of a movie you've watched recently. Share it with a friend. I don't know. We need a little help spreading the good gospel of the harbor here. Likes do help. Comments really do help the algorithm as much as I hate to talk about the algorithm. We would like to, get a little more viewership around here. It would be very helpful. So if you've been on the Harbor Train for a while and you want to support us, there's that way to do it. There's other links in the description if you want other bonus stuff. I have a book for sale, etc., etc. Follow Scott K Comedy on Instagram. Follow me at the Morning Line. It's all in the description. I have video essays. I have a new one out from a few weeks ago. You can check that one out. Other than that, we'll be back next week with what did I say? Oh shit. I'm always under prepared for that part.
Yeah, it's we have 180 episodes.
Yeah,
So,
I know.
yeah,
Go
it's not.
check those out. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching, everybody.